You're listening to Mondays Unfiltered, the podcast for anyone who's accepted that work is inevitably work. We're your hosts, Heather and Kristen. We break down burnout, baffling policies, and corporate chaos with dry humor and real solutions. Grab your coffee and whatever optimism survived the weekend, Mondays have begun. A little about us. Kris spent decades helping executives shape brands and craft messages that inspire, and I built systems that actually made those visions work behind the scenes and kept people from falling apart in the process. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Heather, how are you today? Happy
Hey,
Monday.
Kris.
So we're going to talk. You and I had a lot of fun on our own talking about the subject of micromanaging, everybody's favorite despicable kind of bad management tactic.
Despicable.
So as promised, I don't really have a quote today, but one of our favorite movies, obviously, about dysfunctional work life is Office Space. And while I don't have a quote, I have the scene. It's a famous scene where Peter Gibbons candidly explains his daily routine and lack of motivation. And I'll bet you know what comes next.
Yeah, I pretty much know every word to this movie. He goes, I have 8 bosses, Bob. 8 bosses.
Exactly. And he says that they all ask him to do something. So I'm going to share, I found a ridiculous Reddit recount. Like we have our own experiences, we can recount our own stuff, but I'm going to share that with you in a second. But as promised, I'm going to share some stats from Harvard Business Review. And as we know, excuse me, micromanaging is an appallingly lack of trust in the people that you've hired. And
Mm.
so what the Harvard Business Review said that compared with people in low trust companies, people that work at high trust companies report 74% less stress, 106% more energy at work, 50% higher productivity. I mean, imagine if you're not over reporting things, how much more productive you can be. And 76 more percent engagement. So it's pretty stark. And I have to share, can I share this with you from
Yeah,
Reddit?
yeah,
The
yeah.
Reddit I found, it's very funny. So hold on one second. So this was a story I found. Somebody wrote in and they said they once worked for a CEO in a PR firm who required them all to submit at the end of every single day a list of everything. And this person means everything they had worked on and the time it took to complete the task. So an example was 7:30 arrived to work, logged in, 7 responded to email, blah, 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 blah. 7 worked on XYZ for 15 minutes, 8 had a conversation. The kicker of this story is hilarious. So the writer writes in and says, no, the last 2 times above, the minutes unaccounted for would result in an immediate phone call from the boss. You worked on XYZ task for 15 minutes. What were you doing between 8:05 a.m. and 8:20 a.m.? Um, I
That's
used
out
the
of control.
restroom. I used the restroom and refilled my coffee. Then the boss said, well, I expected to see that on your daily log. Like,
Come on.
huh, who has time to write that all out? Oh, I got up and went
Well,
to the
you're wasting
bathroom.
time by recording all that.
And what is the boss doing all day? Reading his employees, like, what is the boss doing that he has time to read all of
Yeah,
his
yeah,
employees' reports and to pick up the freaking phone and ask, where were you? I was feeling going to the bathroom.
yeah. There was
That's like,
there was so many
anyways.
times in my career that I experienced micromanagement. There was a time that, remember when I was saying that one time I walked out of a business, like there was one time that I was like, forget it, and I just left and walked out. This was the company, is the micromanagement company. The woman came in with no prior knowledge in the industry, was in a different state, had never met us, was I have a history of I'll say attitude. So I was very young at this point. I was in my early 20s. Um, but I remember that she and I did not get along. And at one point, she decided to write me up and ask me to record everything that I did in the day. And it just got to the point where it was
Even go to
relentless.
the bathroom, even the times you went to the bathroom?
I don't remember if I had to go that far. But I do remember like that I got a message while I was at a funeral that they were upset that I did not respond. And I was at my grandfather's funeral, and that was the reason that
Oh.
I walked out.
So did you tell them that? Did you share that with them?
I don't think I know I said that I was at my grandfather's funeral and that's why I didn't respond. And this was a company that was a two-way messaging company, so we were using those texting pagers when they first came out. And
Yeah.
so they expected you to respond. And I was like, that's over the top and I'm not going to put up with that. And I walked out. And I did learn my lesson because I went a month without employment after that and ended up just going for any job so that I could still pay my rent. But I cannot stand the micromanagement. It's like it's so insecure and more on
Well,
their part.
it's a big sign of distrust, and I think insecurity is a good one. Like we talked one day, we said, it's a sign of a lot of different things. I think it's insecurity. I've been lucky enough um, to have very few roles where I've been micromanaged. Usually things are so busy. People expect you to do your jobs. If anything, I've had, you know, managers that I couldn't get a hold of if I needed them, right? But I did have I won't give it away. I have had situations where micromanagement, and what it was is the managers, the sales manager and the director were not experienced. They weren't experienced in the industry we were in. There was definitely is is nepotism, does that also include friendship? That's
Um,
nepotism is really
I mean, the
family.
definition of it is family, but I mean, that could be like the favoritism part, like, where they're overlooking the reality and focusing on the relationship. So I can see where it would play in.
Well, this director we were working with, he said, "Well, I hired you guys, and but see, what we were hired to sell wasn't ready to sell from a technological standpoint, and I don't think it ever was ever it never became ready. They just didn't have it, and so they were very, very nervous. They were reporting up, and sales weren't coming in from any one of us. There were three sales executives, enterprise sales executives, and sales weren't coming in because the product wasn't ready. And so they started requiring us to provide a lot of detail about the activities that we were doing. And so instead of listening to us, and we're going to talk about listening another time, but instead of listening to us and saying, hey, we need to have XYZ in this product for it to be something that the customers will be comfortable with or that they're going to want. And it has to solve this problem. And it's a very simple summation of what it was. But so they started hounding us because, of course, they were probably getting hounded, but they were in over their head. And I think they thought at that point, because they didn't have the expertise to advise product on how the product was going, they were micromanaging, feeling like, oh, well, if I micromanage my staff, I'm doing something.
Mhm. Yeah. That it makes me think, well, it was a hard thing for me when I realized this that companies hire people sometimes to just be managers, to not actually do other work, but just to watch people, which there was a situation that I knew of in my last employment where someone was that's what they did. They were a manager of the people. And there was a lot of micromanagement that went on in there. And I don't think that necessarily, I think it gets away from people sometimes where they don't realize that they're being nitpicky and minuscule, where and people don't always speak up, where they're like, why am I being micromanaged? Or I feel like you're micromanaging me. Rather, they just start to chat behind doors and it causes conflict and gossiping. But I feel like maybe the person could, and I'm playing devil's advocate here. Their intention is probably decent, where they're like, want my team to do well, but it falls into that egotistical that you've talked about before, where it's about them rather than about the people that they lead.
Yeah, because I've had so many sales roles, they tend to look, I mean, you have to report on your activity. They look at your activity. If you log it into a CRM, they're looking at your activity all the
Yeah,
time.
right,
Um, and at the end of the day, if you're selling, you're selling. And
right.
so it becomes less micromanagement. I mean, I did work at a phenomenal company where it was a phenomenal product, phenomenal company. And I think I've talked about this manager before. He was a phenomenal manager. He did not
Mhm.
micromanage, but definitely if he was sensing some performance slippage, he was going to have a conversation with you. And there were different territories. Um, and I was on one territory. So I think the country was broken up into five territories. And one of the managers, no one really wanted to work with him for him because he was a micromanager.
Mhm.
And it was really well known, he'd get into your business and here, how are you having this to the point of like, how are you talking to that client? What are you mentioning to them? And just I'm not sure why he did that. But
There
he
was a
did.
partner at my firm that had just been promoted, and the people that promoted her were micromanaging her, telling her that she needed to submit a copy of something that she was going to send to clients before she sent it so that they could make sure that she was saying the right thing and being seen in the right light. And she was so bold. And I was like, I wish I could. She was on the other side of the country, and I wish I could have high-fived her when she told me this. But she said to them, "You promoted me because you believed in me. Don't micromanage me." And I was like,
Yeah.
holy cow. I was like,
Yeah.
way to go.
It's funny. I had an experience many years ago. I was a um, digital sales director for a company, and um, I was Midwest, so I was based in Chicago,
Hmm.
and I had several people that were on my team, and we did have a couple of younger, you know, fresh out of college or younger, less experienced employees, and this person was like an account manager, and it was one of my accounts, and I had given her some instructions. There was maybe some challenges with the relationship or having to explain something, and I said to her, I said, well, explain this. And she's like, well, I don't know what you mean. And I said, well, I'm going to send you an email, but don't just copy and paste my email. Here's the explanation. And I bulleted it out. Well, she took it, copied and pasted everything I said after I asked her not to, and sent it over. So after that, I had to be more hands-on in terms of a manager with her because there was definitely it wasn't just teaching her about, you know, the solutions that we were selling. I had to help, coach her on how to communicate. So she probably, I don't know if she thought I was being a micromanager at that point, but I'm like, well, you don't cut and paste an email. Somebody has told you not to do that and send it. So
Right,
I think there are times when you do have to step in, when you have to mentor somebody,
right,
and then you let them go. Like you've hired them, they're pretty smart or whatever you've hired them for. Let them do their thing.
right. I can see micromanaging coming into play when someone's not listening to you, like you just said, and they might be on a performance review where you have to be like, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Why are you doing it? But those are learning curves, and
Yes, that's
there's
different.
programming built into place for them. But to have that everyday experience, like we actually had someone write to us already.
We
So
did.
we did. So I'll tell you what that said. It said, I have a new middleman boss this week, and I just got a new account assignment yesterday. Is this me or is this micromanaging? And it was an example of the new middle manager saying, I'd like to check in with everyone. I'd like to catch up and see what's happening. What's taking time for you? What's your struggles? How many IQ quotes do you have? What's your email flow? Approximate emails in your inbox every day. And I said, my response was, in that case, because they're a new manager, I would not consider it micromanaging. If this goes on after so much time, after they've taken time to get to know you and learn what the flow is, they're trying to identify, like we talked about previously, how you manage your time, your disc personality, like who are the people on their team that they're overseeing and how can they work best with them is my impression of it. I haven't met the person, so I don't know, but the inquiry was a valid, like, is this micromanaging or, should I not take this offensively? And my response was like, lean into it now because it's the learning curve
Mhm.
for the manager. And also share the reasons why if you might be seen as not being timely or doing enough, you can talk about your training mishaps and things like that that led to where your productivity is currently. But if it continues and it's nitpicky and you're not progressing, then that's where you might consider that it's micromanaging.
Agreed. I also think, again, I'm shouting out kudos to managers I've had that, really look after their teams really well. It could be that's a new manager. They need to understand the tasks, the cadence. Is there anything onerous on your plate that I can help offload? Or is there a
Right,
process that we
right,
need to take a look at and say, as a company, we need to
right.
fix this?
There's value
So
at times. It's just a matter
pardon
of
me?
if it's there's value at times in micromanaging when you're trying to identify, like when you
Hmm.
do in project management, it's like a root cause analysis where you're like, okay, this is what we're doing and this is what's the causing all the way down. Excuse me. But if it's something, it's just how the person works, then that's a different story.
100%. I mean, that the example that I read off of Reddit,
Mm,
which people, please, we say this all the time. Please, write into us and let us know of your stories because it could get featured. Um, but the guy on Reddit, I mean, whoever wrote that in, I don't know who it was, but that's micromanaging. When
That's
you have a boss
outrageous. Oh my
that
God.
well, I think the end of the story, they said like 8 months later, which I'm like, it only took 8 months. Um, that was facetious. That was
Yeah, I
sarcastic.
know. Like that's a
That's a
lot.
lot. That's not, I mean, I would have been out of there less than time than that. I mean, I guess it depends on the market,
Depends
the
on
job
it.
market.
Hmm.
Yeah. But they said, I think, a good percentage, maybe 75% of the employees had left. But that is I don't know, there's something going
Well, that's
on.
a
I
red
think
flag for the company. Yeah.
but it's like, is it you don't trust?
Hmm.
And yeah, that's true micromanagement as opposed to and what you and I think just experienced,
Hmm.
that was micromanagement. So what do you think, audience? Do you think it's a sign of insecurity? I think it's a sign of
Yeah, for
insecurity
sure.
on management. At least the times I've experienced it. Is it a sign of, hey, I used to do that job and I think I can do it better and I miss
Yeah.
my job?
I bet a lot of it stems from that. And that's where maybe the insecurity comes in. Like I did that before. And so now I'm the boss. And so now I need to be able to tell you how to do it rather than educate you and support you in your own growth.
Yeah, so there could be a lot of different reasons for that. Or they could have a micromanaging boss.
Maybe they were taught that process.
Yeah. But I think to me, I've always felt like it was a big sign of insecurity and you don't really know what you're doing. So I'd love to hear from everybody else. I I came up with a list and you can hop in here too.
Sure.
Um, in terms of avoiding micromanaging and dealing with it. Let's say you love your job, you love your company, you kind of like your boss. Doesn't really matter sometimes. And you don't want to leave. So aside from leaving out what can you do? Um, First of all, it's having clear communications, understanding why are you asking for this?
Mhm.
And again, we always suggest that you ask in a respectful way. Don't push back in front of people, but maybe if they're micromanaging you or the entire team, maybe go to that person and say, is there a better way that we can report on the progress of what we're doing? Are you getting pressure? How can we support each other? Are you not sure about the job? Is there something we can do to fill you in? Then work from a place of setting clear expectations. So the boss has to set clear expectations. First of all, that has to come from the top down. We've talked about that before. So management needs to say, this is what our goals are. This is where we need to be aligned. These are the tasks. Are you not achieving some of the things that you need to achieve? And is there a process issue? I think you just pointed it out, Heather.
Right.
Um, One of the things too is I I think that managers that do succumb to micromanaging, what they have to realize is that if you trust your employees, the morale is going to go up, but
True.
also you're not going it alone. Build a sense of a team as opposed to, hey, are you doing XYZ?
Yeah, where they're
Um,
defensive all the time.
Right. So if you set clear expectations as a manager and you're doing regular reporting, regular team meetings, those meetings are productive. We haven't even talked about meetings. We'll talk about meetings at another time, but they're productive meetings and you understand what's going on, then there should be no real need to micromanage.
Yeah.
Unless the employee, that particular employee needs some coaching.
Right. And I think we've touched on a lot of the things that we intended to in this conversation. So, um, value might be being tied to visibility. Uh,
Oh,
their,
right.
their job security feels uncertain, so they feel like they have to prove something. Identity is wrapped up in being the expert. So that's like the person who did the work and got up and was like, I have to teach you how to do it, but then never lets go. Um, and it backfires because it signals a lack of trust. And one of the books that I had read previously through the last company I was at, they were really big on this was The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey and how you build trust and the importance of building trust. And like you said, it builds morale and it gives people a sense of accomplishment. You slow everything down, which we talked about because you're spending time, you know, managing your schedule rather than being productive. Let's see. And
Oh, the other thing
yeah,
is you're squelching innovation
yeah,
and
that's
and
another one that it
creativity.
was. Yeah. Because people get to the
So,
point where they're like, what does it matter? Like they're not gonna, they want to know everything I do anyhow and approve it, so I can't, you know, I can't trip and I can't try.
well, and it's funny because I have been in a lot of sales roles where they teach you to do the pitch deck. And anybody that's been in sales knows what that is. And they almost want you to remember it verbatim. Well,
Hmm.
people are people, number one. And in most jobs, we have to get along with each other. If you've hired somebody, you have to be able to trust them to develop their own um, style. They communicate a certain way. They build relationships, and this is true between intra department, within the department, with other employees. So you have to allow people to do that. If the training is good on something, then somebody should be able to absorb it, get to the points that are pertinent, and make sure that they're not lying about what they're talking about. But at the end of the day, if you don't trust them to then deliver the information or do their jobs appropriately, then why are you even hiring somebody?
Right, right. You might as well do it yourself. But you don't want like that's not the point of it either. It's to um, bring in the next generation to have those opportunities for innovation so that you can grow and thrive as an organization. I think the one of the funniest things that I read last week when I was researching this was a post from somebody that said, my boss asked me to uh write down everything that I did in my day. And so it started with sent you an email uh, at 10 a.m. waiting for a response so that I can proceed. At 10:30, at 10:45, still waiting for a response. At 11, still waiting for a response. At 12 o'clock, still waiting for a response from email. 1 o'clock, sent a follow-up email to see if there was any progress that I could move. And then towards the end of the post, it said, so that stopped pretty quickly.
That's cute. That's cute. So definitely we'd love to hear from you guys about micromanagement. I'm sure there's a lot of different angles and points that we didn't cover. But for the most part, nobody wants somebody breathing down your neck.
Right. We've said it before, autonomy.
Right, right. So write us in to mondaysunfiltered@gmail.com. Did I do that right?
Yep.
I might need micromanaging on remembering our Gmail address. Love to hear your stories. Doesn't have to be about micromanagement. It can be anything. But we could feature your story. Again, we'll keep your identity and your company secret.
And until next time, stay unfiltered.
Stay unfiltered, except for your coffee. That's it for this episode of Mondays Unfiltered. If something today made you laugh, think, cringe, or finally question the workplace norms you've been conditioned to accept, good. That's where change begins. If you enjoyed the conversation, hit subscribe, share the episode with someone who deserves a better Monday, and help us push the movement towards healthier, more human workplaces. And we want to hear your stories. The surprises, the successes, the dysfunction, the burnout, the breakthroughs, just send them our way. Your experience might shape a future episode. And remember, we can do better, we can be better, and we don't have to tolerate BS just because it feels familiar. Until next week, stay curious, stay courageous, and stay unfiltered.